Hi, everyone, and welcome to the show. Since it's National Kidney Month, we are going to be talking today with Danica Almazan, a nurse and Miss Marin County 2025, whose family's courageous fight against kidney disease sparked a powerful mission of hope. And we are talking about kidney disease for this entire show. And you might wonder, well, why are we talking about kidney disease on a show about cardiovascular and vascular health? Well, kidney disease, especially in advanced stages, can lead to peripheral artery disease, which is poor circulation in mainly the legs, and it can lead to amputation. And many of the peripheral artery disease patients that both Dr. John and I support do have chronic kidney disease, or CKD, and ESRD, or end stage renal disease, which is the advanced stage of chronic kidney disease, some of whom are also in need of a kidney transplant. So we feel that we have to get the word out there on the importance of kidney health, as well as raising awareness that all kidney disease patients should be checked for peripheral artery disease and to find a doctor who specializes in opening those very small arteries below the knee and into the foot, which is where, as Dr. John will attest to, it's where kidney disease patients are typically stricken with PAD, right, Dr. John?
Indeed. Happy Saturday.
Happy
Hope you're doing
Saturday.
well. Sorry, my voice is a little rough. Just trying to get through a head cold, but nonetheless, yeah. So a very important topic to touch on. Folks that have kidney dysfunction, meaning their kidneys aren't working well, leads to lots of issues. One of the biggest ones that we kind of see as peripheral interventionalists is the significant blocking of the arteries below the knee. Oftentimes they become very calcified. And in fact, this past week I was treating a gentleman who had chronic kidney disease and very calcified vessels, and it was a really an uphill battle. So it's important to recognize it. It's important to be preventative as well. A lot of times, patients with diabetes can have worsening kidney function from poorly controlled diabetes. So if you're listening out there and have diabetes, make sure you're talking to your primary care doctor, your endocrinologist, making sure your kidney function's okay, and just being vigilant. So it should be a good show. Looking forward to speaking with Miss Danica.
Yeah, and once against the kidney transplant stage of things, um, I literally have not found one kidney disease or kidney transplant patient that hasn't had some form of advanced stage peripheral artery disease, but most just don't get diagnosed soon enough. Why is it, in your experience, that a lot of these patients do not get tested for PAD soon enough? Or why is it that they don't end up showing up at your doorstep until they're a toe step away from amputation?
At least in my experience, a lot of folks that have significant renal dysfunction often more so have blockages below the knees, and those don't always manifest themselves with like classic symptoms. And typically, when I'm seeing them, they already have an ulcer or wound that's not healing. And when I see somebody that's on dialysis that has a wound, so they have kidney failure, they need hemodialysis to filter the blood, and they have a wound, I know pretty much 9 out of 10 folks are going to have significant, we call it infrapopliteal or blockages below the knee, very calcified, very long blockages, very difficult to treat, difficult to stay open. But we are able to help these patients, but it is, I think it's at least one of the worst kind of diagnoses that I see that have severe PAD, and oftentimes those patients do require minor amputations because they not only have blockages below the knee, but above the ankle, but also below the ankle. So very severe small vessel disease as well, which makes it harder to get blood flow to the distal tips of the foot, including the piggies.
So, two major lessons that we hope that people walk away with today is number one, it's if you have chronic kidney disease, make sure you do get checked for PAD. But number two is the importance of helping these patients with kidney disease thrive and making sure that organ donation is a top priority and that everyone is aware of it. Everyone goes to the DMV and make sure that you do sign those little put that donation what do you call it? They have a tab on there or a sticker they can put on there. So that's really important.
Organ donor, yeah.
organ donor, so important. So two messages that we want to get to today. Can't wait to share Danica's story. It's pretty incredible of her fight for her family and now the fight for others. So what do you say we just kick things off with a moment of inspiration to get things underway?
Dr. John Phillips' spectacular vascular moment of inspiration.
Forgive me, but like every time I hear that, I could probably be in the worst mood. And when I hear the little, like it just makes
We
me
have to
chuckle.
thank,
I love it.
we have to thank, since Mike's
I,
here right now, one of the
I
producers over
know.
at KDOW. He's the one who did that. That was
I
his
know.
brainchild.
I mean, Mike, man, I'm glad you're back on the team, dude. That was awesome. So, not to belabor it, but so I have a quote from a Dr. Wilhelm Johann Kolff, Kolff. So he was a Dutch physician in the early, kind of the mid 20th century. So he actually is credited with creating hemodialysis or one of the first functioning dialysis machines in the 1940s. And so his work kind of laid the foundation for modern dialysis. So I thought that was germane. So he's also kind of known as the father of artificial organs. So he worked on a total artificial heart Cleveland Clinic, and I think he got a Nobel Prize for it. But anyway, he's quoted as saying, "If a man can grow a heart, he can build one." So talk about, innovation. Like, hey, let's go for it and build some artificial organs. So back in the 1940s, he was working on that. So I thought that was an interesting quote. If a man can grow a heart, he can build one.
I'm curious. I see Danica already. She's nodding there. Danica, it sounds like you agree. That's music to your ears, isn't it?
Definitely is. I mean, as someone who is an innovator myself, I I see that quote and I think, there's a lot that we can do to help our society, help the people who have medical deficiencies. Um, in the future, hopefully in the near future, I would love to create medical devices that ultimately help and save patients and mitigate medical errors in the society in the healthcare field because as nurses we're burnt out and that's the reality of it and sometimes we get hit hard if something happens to our patients so if any way I can reduce medical errors and save patients through innovation that is my number one goal.
And that's music to Dr. Phillips' ears too, a fellow inventor and innovator.
Well, I mean, last week we had that fantastic conversation with the entrepreneurs, Jeff and Michael, and so yeah, I mean, hey, innovation is, you if you need something, you've got to innovate. So we're always trying to, like I said last week, create a better mousetrap or a new way to catch a mouse. So love it.
And coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, we are going to get to the heart of Danica's incredibly courageous story and her mission to instill hope in so many people with chronic kidney disease across the globe. So stay with us, don't go away.
How many procedures are you willing to go through? Is it worth going through that many, or would you rather just cut your leg off?
That's funny. Was it worth it? Oh yeah, I have my leg, man.
Amputation should absolutely, positively, 100% never be a first-line treatment.
What an incredible operation, what an incredible lab you have here. Without a doubt, we're underdiagnosing peripheral arterial disease. It has not gotten the attention that it should because it is a killing disease, it is a disabling disease, and most importantly, it's a disease that we now have great treatments for. Okay, let's go to the next one.
They were going to amputate it, and I needed to consult with my family. Did I want it off here or here? You're just shocked. It's scary. I don't even know how to explain it. You're 42 years old.
We're waiting till people are at the end of the spectrum and almost beyond hope. There is good care available here. Closed minds are what we have to get rid of.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy Saturday. Let's jump right into the conversation with Danica, a newly minted RN. So, Danica, tell us about your interest in organ donation. I can see an interest in dance, fishing, whatever, but organ donation, obviously there was something personal that brought that about, correct?
Correct. Yes. So it all started with my grandfather, my grandpa Sonny, who means the absolute world to me. And he honestly wouldn't have impacted me the way that he does today if it wasn't for his first organ donation, which was in 1999. I didn't know too much about it at the time of what it was. It wasn't until he got COVID again that I understood the importance of organ donation, and then seeing also the impact with my dad, because he also has chronic kidney disease, just seeing the impact that it had health-wise. I would see them come home and they were drained. There was a time where I saw my grandfather like bent over the toilet and he was throwing up because it was because of CKD, and his kidneys were just failing. So just seeing that, it made me, realize the importance of organ donation and why it's so important, why people need it. So seeing the difference between the before and after, it was life-changing. So just really being able to provide that to other people has always been really important to me as an individual and also as a nurse.
At what point, in your life, you said you grew up, your grandfather actually had one kidney or his first kidney transplant before you were actually born, the same year you were born, correct?
Correct.
At what point did you start realizing the gravity of the situation and just how devastating this or debilitating that this disease could actually be?
I would say it was sort of like kind of up and down throughout his life. So my grandfather, before he got COVID and that took over his kidneys, he was full of life. He was always cracking jokes. He loves dad jokes, and I think that's where I get it from. But he.
Oh, wait. Do you have a do you have a dad joke? Come on.
Oh
All right.
gosh.
Think of one and then we'll get back to it.
I do have one if you want to hear it.
All right, let's hear it. Is that okay, Kim?
Oh, yeah.
What
Lighten the situation. It's a really tough subject. So when you can brighten the room, it's always a good thing.
Kim probably, as soon as you said dad joke, Kim's probably like, he's going to ask her. I know he is.
Okay. It's a meh one, but what do mermaids wash their fins with?
Mermaids wash their fins with
Tide.
It's a good one. That actually is really good. I was thinking more of the wax, trying to figure out wax on, wax off.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, sorry to derail you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
A little squidding. The tide's good. Tide's good. Okay. But you were saying just how your grandfather was full of life, and that's where you get a lot of your sense of humor from, and then just something seemed to turn in him and he became not his normal, funny dad joke self.
Yeah, so I think that's where I realized, the importance of organ donation, but also the effects of what kidney disease can do. Because once he was diagnosed, and he started to go downhill, like he wasn't himself. He wasn't joking around. He would give bland answers. He wasn't the sunny person that I used to know. And then when he started dialysis, it got even worse. Dialysis patients have to go in about, I think, 3 days a week for about 4 hours, and that's draining in itself. Even though he would like come back home, he would just rest the entire day, and then couldn't travel as much. Even if we were at family parties, he was still resting in the room. So it really took a toll on, not just him, but a lot of us, because we couldn't have that interaction with him. But after the kidney donation, immediately after, it was like night and day. He was cracking his jokes again. He was walking around, and he was just so full of life. And that really shows the importance and the difference organ donations can make.
Can you talk about that process and that search for a kidney donor?
So we were a little worried because when he was diagnosed, he was running out of options. They had him on hemodialysis and the catheter that's close to his heart, but typically the doctors don't want that for over a year, and he was pushing past that limit. So after that year, they got him on peritoneal dialysis, but unfortunately, he wasn't responding to it that well. And then it came to a point where one of the last options was the AV fistula, but the doctors had literally told us, if we put him on this, it's just a death sentence, because he he's not responding well. So ultimately, the last option was the transplant. And so I secretly went behind my family's back. I got tested for it, and then I found out that I was a match. So um, I went through the process, and then we found out that another family member of mine, unrelated actually, was a match, and that really made all the difference.
But I
So,
want to go back to this. See, were your parents on board with you being a potential donor and going through the process of getting tested and possibly becoming one?
At first, I had asked, and of course they said no. So I had to schedule an appointment with my grandfather at this one time, and I remember seeing a link to the transplant process, and so I sent that to myself, and then that's how I got on board with the transplant process. And I remember um, I couldn't keep it for long because there was one test. I had gone through the blood test, I've gone through urine tests, and there was one particular test where I believe it was a creatinine test. And they sent me home with this big orange jug that I had to pee in for the next 24 hours. They said you have to keep it on ice. And I thought to myself, how am I gonna come in the house with a big orange jug and 2 bags of ice? Um, so I ended up
so
telling my
how old
mom.
were you at the time?
I
Were you
was 23, actually 22, sorry.
okay? I mean, so you could have done it if you wanted to.
I did, yes, but then
Okay.
the family has to agree. That was one of the processes where
Oh,
legally they had to tell my grandfather who was up for donations. So I knew I couldn't keep it for long, but I wanted to just try and get my family on board with it by telling them I was a match. And so I did tell both my parents, and
Right, but you got caught.
I did, yes. I unfortunately
You
could not
couldn't hide
hide
the
the orange.
jugs.
I couldn't hide the jug or the 2 bags of ice. So I told my mom, and she had said, you're not just a match for your grandfather, but your dad is the same blood type. So ultimately, I was a match for both my grandfather and my dad. So I was sort of at this fork in the road where I had to choose between, do I save my grandfather or do I save my dad?
so dad needed a transplant too?
My dad needs a transplant too. Yeah, he currently does still. Yeah. But I was at
Wow.
that moment where I had to make that ultimatum. Like, do I and I just remember crying that day because it's such a hard choice, and it's a choice that no one should make. That's why organ donations are so important. So people like myself, they don't have to make that choice of, one, who do I save? And two, is my family member going to live? So really that it was a hard choice to make, but my family was still on board with me. They said, whatever choice you make, that's yours to make. But yeah, it was ultimately a really hard decision.
Well,
You're a
because if you
hero.
didn't have, yeah,
Yeah.
if you didn't have, literally, if you guys could not find an organ donor for your grandfather, would you, and I know this is a horrible question to ask, but would you have had to let him die?
That
Would
was
your family have let him? Or would they have actually let you at that point do that for him and then worry about your dad later?
um they left that choice completely up to me. But I knew, yeah, it was a hard choice to make, but I knew my grandfather didn't have much time versus my dad. Um, he wasn't as severe as my grandfather. He was still on dialysis, so I had to make that choice of,
But so your grandfather, he already had one transplant.
he already had one, yes, but
So
that one
then
was after
did
the.
they like were you able to go through a national search for him, or was it like, hey, you got to find the family member, or because we're not going to give him a second kidney from some random
Yeah,
person? Is that how that went down?
yeah, he was low on the list.
Okay. That's a tough call. Like I'm just trying to think if would I give a kidney to a family member? Probably, but man, and then
Yeah,
have to choose potentially?
yeah, having to choose was the hardest, and having to tell my dad that, I think that was the hardest one. you're just telling him like, I
How old was your grandpa at the time when he needed the second one?
think he was 60, and that's why he
Okay.
was so low on the list, just because his age and his condition, the chances of him getting a transplant versus what my dad's chances. Um, yeah, my
How
dad had.
old's how old's so is there a genetic issue in your family with kidney function, or is this what is the
Um,
reason for the kidney failure? Do you know?
it was had to do a lot with high blood pressure.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and diet, unfortunately.
Wow.
Well, coming up right here on the Heart of Innovation, a very heart-wrenching story at this point in Danica's journey. We'll have more with her coming up next, right here on KDOW. You don't want to miss the rest of the story. Stay with us.
Your type of condition is called critical limb ischemia. It's the most advanced form of PAD, or peripheral arterial disease.
Every 4 minutes, there is an amputation in this country due to PAD and diabetes. We also know that 85% of these amputations are preventable with early intervention.
It's a flip of the coin. Patient prognosis is tied to whether or not they are referred to a true expert in the management of peripheral arterial disease.
Do you know if your physician is an experienced CLI operator?
When you're in the hospital dealing with doctors and stuff, you figure they know what they're talking about.
The skill level varies doctor from doctor and hospital to hospital.
Patients with limb threat are in constant fear. The depression that someone experiences after they lose a limb is equivalent to those of losing their spouse of 40 years.
I was stuck in a wheelchair close to 2 years and my husband had to quit work. I didn't know what to do at this point because we had had nothing but infections and hospital stays and infections and hospital stays.
And they took one toe, another toe, and then it was another toe, and then half his foot before he was even diagnosed with PAD.
And all I heard was, "What are we doing here? Just cut it off." And I pulled the curtain back like, "Are you kidding me?
Do you really want to go through all that?
That's crazy. That's insane. The protocol is to send them to amputation. Always, always, always get multiple opinions.
We do have options.
We need to listen more to our patients.
If you're going to chop off their leg anyway, why not just let someone else try?
This is the progression. First comes the wounds, and then comes an amputation. And I wasn't going to accept that.
So that's what it's like to try to save a leg.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm glad we got a dad joke in there because this is a very heavy topic. And I was just thinking we were talking during the break, like, wow, that is truly, Danica, you are a hero. I think the greatest, sacrifice somebody can make is laying their life down and or giving an organ to somebody. So, and now you're faced with a potential choice, right, between grandpa or dad. So walk us, let's continue on this journey. What are you thinking now?
It was honestly, I don't know how to describe the feeling. It was heart-wrenching for me. In a way, I tried not to feel like a bad daughter or a bad granddaughter, if I had to make that choice. So I told my family, and we had that talk at the dinner table, like what's going to happen next? If she donates to one person, what happens to the other? And I think me getting tested sort of set off a trigger for my family, not a bad trigger, but more of like, okay, if she got tested, we really have to find someone else because she's our only option, and my family didn't want me to go through it. If I didn't have to. And then we end up finding out that my aunt's husband, so completely unrelated, was actually a match. And so when we found that out, we had that option, do we go with him? Do we go with her? So they ultimately chose my uncle, of course. So if anything, I feel a little bit better because I know if my dad needs my kidney, I am there.
But right now you have to go through the process, right? Multiple hospitals trying to get him on different lists. But at least it's comforting to know that if you are needed, you can and will step in.
Yes, of course.
And so what was it like also? I know you're speaking kind of for someone else, but what was it like for your uncle? Was it just a no-brainer with him to be like, shoot, I'm a match. Go for it. Let's do it.
Yeah, he thankfully for him, he's been in our family for quite a while, so he really saw my grandfather as a dad. Like that's the impact my grandfather had made on so many lives. So when he was called and he was matched, he first said it's a no-brainer. I don't want my grandfather to go, or I don't want him to go through, that struggle of not having a kidney, but I also don't want to put Danica at risk for anything because she is still young. And even the doctors were biting their nails. I was only 22 at the time. They were like, you're so young, you have so much ahead of you. So for him, he didn't want to put me through that. And it was just no question.
Would you have done it though for
I
your
would have.
grandpa?
Yes, I would have.
Wow. Do you think that being like the Filipino community is, I mean, family's important for everybody, right? But is your family in that community just much tighter than maybe some other nationalities, or was it just because I'm thinking about an uncle donating to a grandfather, like that seemed pretty impressive to me, I guess.
Yeah, we are definitely a tight-knit family. Family has always been number one for us, so it was a no-brainer. And the fact that my grandfather, just his personalities, it just had touched so many lives. So knowing what he was going through, it affected a lot of us. So putting our family first, and especially him, it meant a lot to us. So it was definitely a no-brainer that anyone would have donated to him.
If kidney disease runs in your family, you have your grandfather needs a transplant, you have your dad that needs a transplant, you end up donating to your father, you end up with one kidney. What happens if you come down with this as well? What happens to you?
That was definitely a question I had to ponder, being so young, and even the doctors were telling me, you're really young, you still have so much. But I think I just knew, like, okay, if I'm living, anyone is okay with just one kidney, but knowing my predicament, knowing the situation I'd be in, I would have to live more cautiously. So my life would have to change after that. So I knew the risks that were coming, but I was still okay with altering my life as long as I got to see my family members live. That was my goal, to have my grandkid or my kids raise up with their grandpa or my great grandpa or their great grandpa.
Was your grandpa willing to accept your kidney? Did you have that conversation with him, or he knew, right?
Yeah, so there was one night where we just came together and we didn't tell him what was coming, but we kind of just sprung it on him, like Danica and the other family member is a match. And he was quiet at first, and you can see his wheelhouse turning, and it was a lot to take in. He didn't want it, but he knew that if he didn't, he wouldn't have much time with us. So he knew what was coming, and he knew the risks, but he understood.
Was there anything that you remember saying that changed his mind, where he was like, you know what? Thank you. I am very grateful. I will accept.
I think it was when, we had told him, and I had told him, I was like, Grandpa, like, I want you walking me down the aisle. Like, I want you and my dad, of course, walking me down the aisle, and I want you to see my kids grow up. And I think him knowing how much he meant to me, it made him want to push forward, look forward to that future.
I can hear your voice crack a little bit. This is obviously pretty hard and very emotional.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So your grandpa said, yes, Danica, I will take your kidney if push
Yes,
comes to shove.
When I was the only option,
Yeah.
yes. And then, well, we didn't tell him exactly. It was sort of just like, oh, what if I'm a kidney, donor? And I already knew at the time that I was a match. At first he was like, no, but then he realized the importance of it.
That's so beautiful. And coming up next, right here on KDOW in the Heart of Innovation, we are going to hear about Danica's plight to not only save her family, but maybe your family. They could be next. So stay with us. Don't go away.
When you your sugar runs high, it's more than a sign. Diabetes creeping in, it's a dangerous line. Pre-diabetes too, don't think it's too light. It can lead to PAD, so start the fight. Sugar's sweet, but the cost is real. High blood sugar makes your arteries feel clogged. Slow flow, it's a ticking time bomb. Catch it early, stay strong, and keep your legs on. Sugar's not so sweet when your leg is in pain. Not controlling sugar is where peripheral artery disease sets in. Got sugar? Get checked. Don't wait too late. Save your legs, save your life, take control of your fate. Leg pain, cold feet, neuropathy too. These are signs diabetes caught you. High sugar's the link for circulation and pain. Left untreated, your leg might end inflamed. Got sugar in your blood, it's time to beware. Diabetes and PAD, they're a deadly affair. Don't ignore the signs, don't let it slide. Get tested, save your legs and your pride. Sugar's not so sweet when your leg is in pain. Not controlling sugar is where peripheral artery disease sets in. Got sugar? Get checked. Don't wait too late. Save your legs, save your life, take control of your fate. Oh, sugar's not so sweet when your leg is in pain. Not controlling sugar is where peripheral artery disease sets in. Got sugar? Get checked. Don't wait too late. Save your legs, save your life, take control of your fate.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So I'm getting with the. I got to give a shout out to Reflow Medical, and I'm getting with the flow here with Danica's story. So Grandpa got his kidney. Okay, he's doing well, presumably, and Dad's still up in the air, and you are on the list if he needs it. Correct? Or share it with us where your dad is in this journey.
So currently, he's on 𝐒𝐭𝐫𝐬's list for a transplant, but he's also trying to get signed up with the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. So they're actually flying out next week to hopefully get him on that list. But I had asked him, I'm available now. Like, what's the next move? And he said, I don't want your kidney. I mean, it is hard for him to, trying to accept, taking that away from your child. It's, in his perspective, it's very difficult, which I completely understand. But if it ever gets to a point where, he's no longer responding to dialysis or things get worse, he says that if push comes to shove, he will take the kidney.
How did you go from I am on a mission to save the life of my family members to saying, you know what, this is a bigger problem than just me and my family. I have to set out and actually create the change I want to see for a problem across the globe?
Yeah, it really had to stem from my family, seeing the hardships of kidney disease, but also knowing the chances of people receiving a transplant. It's sometimes people die waiting. And I currently work in a hospital, and I've seen patients pass because they're just waiting. So it's really important just to get that out there, and if you have a chance to save a life, wouldn't you want your last act to be life-changing and life-saving? So just really getting that word out there, the impact that it can make on not just on the patient, but the family as well, it really makes a difference. And I actually interviewed someone who was an organ recipient, and she had said something that really meant a lot to me. She had said that organ donations aren't a one-to-one thing. It's a family-to-family connection, and just really getting that out there and having people understand the importance of it is always important to me, because I've seen it with my family, and I want other people to have that chance with their family too.
And so what are you doing to help spread awareness for kidney health and the importance of organ donation?
Yes, so I am advocating for organ donations constantly, just interviewing people who have that experience of either receiving or donating an organ, but also working with Donate Life America to really get the word out there and get people signed up in the importance of organ donation.
And what does it mean to you to be a part of the Miss America organization, which now has a connection with the American Heart Association, and being, coming up in the ranks there as Miss Marin County 2024 and 25. And you are going to be going for hit the next rung of the ladder, which is Miss California, for ultimately that shot to be able to become Miss America and work directly with the American Heart Association on a mission such as this, because people who are at risk, as we mentioned in the beginning, people with kidney disease are at high risk of vascular and cardiovascular disease.
Yeah, so it really means a lot to me that the Miss America is partnering with the American Heart Association, because heart disease is the #1 killer in women in America, and it's having that same mission to not only change and inspire lives, but to also save them means a lot to me. And that's something that I hope to continue, not just as Miss Marin County, but also Miss California, and hopefully one day Miss America, but really ultimately saving lives. Just seeing that mission and getting the word out there that people need to be aware, even though you may not have any symptoms, you may seem perfectly healthy, things can change in an instant. So always being cautious, aware, and also taking care of your health right now when you can.
And how does
you
organ...
always...
Go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, did you know you always wanted to be a nurse? And did the kidney issues with your grandpa and family kind of stimulate that as well for you?
It did, yeah. So in a way, I've always had this caring mindset. I'm pretty much a giver. So just always giving my time to people and helping them. I initially wanted to be a veterinarian, which I know is random. I've got 3 little dogs, so but being able to connect with them and hearing their symptoms, it's a little difficult compared to humans. So eventually I do want to become a pediatric nurse, because I do love kids. Just being able to work with them and give them a sense of normalcy is part of being a nurse, and it's also very important in pediatrics.
But right now you're applying to work at dialysis centers, I hear.
I am, yes. So dialysis centers, they of course mean so much to me, seeing the impact that they've had on my dad. My dad, even though he's exhausted, he's always telling us stories of the new friends he's making with the technicians and the nurses. So really being able to come full circle and give the same care that my dad's received, it does mean a lot to me.
And coming up next, right here on The Heart of Innovation on KDOW, we'll have final thoughts, so don't go away.
So many benefits to nitric oxide, because it's a natural molecule in our body and it helps widen the blood vessels. So you've heard of the term vasodilation before. But when we vasodilate, we improve blood flow. So for somebody with claudication, P.A.D, we really want to improve that blood flow. And so people, with those symptoms of leg pain and such, boosting nitric oxide can really be a game changer, right? It helps to relax and open those arteries, right? And so more blood reaches your legs. It helps to reduce inflammation, so less arterial damage and stiffness in the arteries. It can help prevent clot formation, so lower risk of blockages to the extremities, and it can improve your exercise endurance. So it helps muscles get the oxygen they need.
Now, this is something that occurs naturally inside your body.
It is, yes.
And so do we know what depletes nitric oxide in our body, or is that just part of the aging process?
It is part of the aging process, yes.
And so are there best practices in terms of replenishing your body with this nitric oxide?
So really we look at like food as medicine, right? We want to essentially boost nitric oxide naturally, and that's through eating foods that are rich in nitric oxide. So those nitrate-rich foods, such as beet juice, is a great option. Your leafy greens, spinach, arugula, kale, celeries, radishes, those are great foods to start with. That really help promote nitric oxide naturally.
And so when you talk about beet juice, is that the same as consuming beetroot powder? I use that a lot in my smoothies.
Yeah, so similar to that. Yeah, same thing, because beetroot powder, right, helps circulation. It boosts nitric oxide for kind of better blood flow. And it's beets are kind of one of the richest sources of dietary nitrates, right? Your body converts the nitric oxide from the beets there and acts as a vasodilator.
Welcome back, everybody. We've got 4 minutes left. Excellent show. So real quick, Danica, before you give us your final thoughts, how long is the wait list on average for a kidney now in the U.S.?
Average is 7 years.
Wow.
And at what point do they get put on the list? There must be a trigger that would allow them, right? You have parameters for that.
Yes, so it depends on the severity of their condition, and then also other factors as well, how involved you are, your weight. They do a bunch of tests before they put you on the transplant and you get approved.
Yeah, that weight we heard from a couple of other patients is really a big factor, because there's a lot that goes into it. You can't be above a certain weight, but typically, can these patients wait 7 years? That's a long time.
It is, yeah. So honestly, my dad's been on it for 5 years now, and we're still waiting. So the wait can be tedious, and it's very long.
And dialysis too is so taxing on the body, and
Yeah.
I mean, that's a long time to be on dialysis as well. So we talked about it during the break. It's tough. It's very tough.
It is.
And it must be frustrating to watch. I mean, the decline, through that process of waiting.
Yeah, not only do you see him decline, but it's also taxing on my family as well. My mom, she's had to give up a lot, as well as us. We're all limited to where we can go. So it's been very hard.
So what are your final thoughts, your final takeaways for those who are watching right now? Is there a message that you'd like to get out?
Yes, of course. So if you have chronic kidney disease, please get checked for P.A.D because you are at risks. And people who should be getting checked for CKD, if you have diabetes, if you have high blood pressure like my family has, or if you have a history, please go get checked if you can. And then lastly, if you can, and if you haven't yet, please sign up to be an organ donor. It really means a lot, and it is a family-to-family connection, and you can potentially save a life. And if you would like to help me on my journey to save lives, please follow me at Miss Marin County on Instagram.
And if you want to be an organ donor, you can go to www.organdonor.gov. You can also make sure that it's on your driver's license as well the next time you go to the DMV. Thank you so much, Danica, for all of your courage and sharing your story. I think you're going to have a huge impact just in being here, in helping people to make that decision to become an organ donor, but also to be checked early on if they have the risk factors for chronic kidney disease, and also for those with chronic kidney disease to get checked for P.A.D, that poor circulation in the legs. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hopefully you learned a lot and enjoyed her story. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.